Hello everyone, it's Wilson here. Let's look at this limit problem. That's also a one-sided limit problem. If you have seen my previous video, then you can see that I recently have been doing some one-sided limit problems, and those are infinite limits. And as you can see, this is another infinite limit that we have here, because let's say if we have x approaching negative 1/3, right? And then you plug the 1/3, negative 1/3 into this x, you have 3 times negative 1/3, that's negative 1, and then plus 1. Then this quantity is approaching 0. So when you take that quantity approaching 0 and then you raise that to the second power and then take the square root, that quantity is still approaching 0. But the numerator is not approaching 0. As you can see, the numerator is actually approaching negative 1/3 from the left side. And so because the top is not approaching 0, but the bottom is approaching 0, then what happened is that we are actually getting either infinity or negative infinity is the answer. So that's an infinite limit. And so the question is whether that's infinity or negative infinity. That's what we need to find out right now. Okay, so let's get started. So first, as you can see here, we are going to have the x approaching negative 1/3 from the left. So you can see that the top is actually a negative quantity, right? But now what about the bottom? The bottom, okay, is something that we need to think about at the beginning. Is that if we have this quantity square and then take the square root, and then you can see that the square root is actually negating the effect of the square, right? It's reversing this operation right here. So you may say, isn't that just 3x plus 1? They cancel each other out. We cannot really say that. It actually depends on whether this quantity on the inside is positive or negative. If it's positive, then we would just say that, okay, so the square and the square root, they just cancel out. So we simply would just get 3x plus 1. But if this 3x plus 1 is negative, then what happens? Then we'll say that it would be the opposite of the 3x plus 1. So we need to be careful when we are writing this. But for this problem, what we can do is that instead of thinking about the two cases, we can simply just rewrite this in this absolute value form, okay? And so what does that mean? That means we can actually say that that's equal to the absolute value of 3x plus 1. Okay, so just that. And now let's analyze each part of the limit right now. So as x approaching negative 1/3, right, from the left side, then what happens is that, so we know that x is going to be approaching that. What about the 3x plus 1? Let's look at the 3x plus 1 right here. So we're getting the 3x plus 1. Then what happens is that it's going to be the absolute value of 3 times something plus 1, and that something is going to be negative 1/3. And then from the left side, right? And so just keep going down, then let's see what's going on. 3 times negative 1/3, so you can see that that's going to be approaching negative 1 from the left side, plus 1. And so we know that if we have negative 1 here and then that's positive 1, when we add them together, we are going to be getting 0. So you know that this quantity that we have inside the absolute value is going to be approaching 0. Now the question is that approaching 0 from the left or from the right? I would tell you that it actually doesn't matter, because eventually you are going to be taking the absolute value of that. So whether or not it's approaching 0 from the right or from the left, after you have taken the absolute value, the quantity will be approaching 0 from the right. Okay, so we know that it's going to be approaching 0 from the right, because you are not going to be getting a negative value after you take the absolute value, right? So then now we have the sign for this bottom part right here. Okay, so let's continue with the problem, right? Let's continue with the problem. And so what's really happening is that the top is approaching negative 1/3. So we have negative 1/3 at the top. What about the bottom? The bottom, as I put here, right? We know that it's going to be approaching 0 from the right, and it's supposed to be a positive number, right? So that's why we put the plus as the superscript of the 0. So now we can determine whether it's infinity or negative infinity. It's really because we have the sign for the top, we have the sign for the bottom, right? The top is a negative number, the bottom is a positive number when you divide the top by the bottom. Then what happens? We are going to be getting a negative quantity. So the answer, okay, will be negative infinity. So that's it for this problem. If you like this video, please give me a like, subscribe my channel, and share my videos to others. It will give me support to make more videos. If you have questions or have a topic that you want me to talk about, please leave me a comment. Thank you.